Hello everyone, I'm Roshan Jahan Ahmed and I welcome you all to my channel. Today we are going to discuss about Unit 6 topics from the Psychology paper of UGC NET examination, that is paper 2, and the unit is based on topics from thinking, intelligence and creativity topics of psychology. But for today's video we will only stick to the portion from thinking. We will finish intelligence and creativity portion in our next two videos. So keep watching. And before starting with the video, let me tell you that these videos on psychology topics are not only going to help you for UGC NET examination, but also for any other examination or interview where you will have to face questions regarding psychology topics. For example, if you are preparing for your PhD entrance examination, or if you are thinking of sitting for an interview regarding a job where knowledge about psychology topics is required, and also if you have cracked your PhD entrance examination but now you have to sit for a face-to-face interview or the viva that many universities conduct after the entrance examination, then you may expect such questions coming your way. And cognitive psychology, on which this unit is based on, is such a paper in psychology which is given much importance, and there is a huge possibility that you will face questions mostly from the cognitive psychology part. So be prepared, keep watching and try to gain information or facts about cognitive psychology topics and also the conceptual understanding regarding all the topics from as many sources as you can, starting from your books, your class notes and the internet resources. So let's start with our video then. So these are the topics that we are going to discuss today: thinking, language and thought, types of reasoning, problem solving, the types of problem solving, strategies and obstacles. And we will also discuss about decision making, the types and models of decision making, and concept formation, rules, types and strategies, role of concepts in thinking. So let's start with the quick overview of Unit 6, language and thought. So here we have a hypothesis which is known as the linguistic relativity hypothesis. It was given by Benjamin Lee Whorf. And what does this state? It states that language determines the contents of thought. It is also known as linguistic determinism. What and how a person thinks is determined by the language. That means the role of language is such that it can go on to determine how a person will think and what will be the contents of his or her thoughts. So language holds such an important value according to this hypothesis, where it is actually determining the pattern of thought of the person. But this hypothesis has been controversial. Now let's move to what Jean Piaget says about thinking and language. According to him, thought is the determinant of language. So here it is the other way around. Thought not only determines language but also precedes it. That means thought comes before language. And in children, it can be seen that they form an internal representation of the world through thinking. Even before language is formed in children, they start thinking, and this thinking is in the form of the internal representation of the world. So, according to Jean Piaget, it is the thought which determines language, and it comes before language development. Here we have another theorist, Lev Vygotsky. According to him, there are different origins of language and thought. So in children, thoughts and language develop separately until about 2 years of age, and after that, language and thought merge. And before 2 years, thoughts are mostly pre-verbal. Now we come to the types of reasoning. We have deductive reasoning. Deductive reasoning begins with an assumption that we know or believe to be true, based on which we arrive at conclusion, and it starts from general to particular. Now, if I have to give you an example of deductive reasoning, for example, you say that men are mortal, and then you state another sentence here that Hari is a man, and therefore you conclude that Harry is mortal. So this is an example of deductive reasoning, where you are starting with the general assumption and you conclude and you come to a specific conclusion. What about inductive reasoning? Inductive reasoning is based on specific facts and observations, and it starts from particular to general. So on the basis of several facts, you come to a generalized assumption about something, and those conclusions are actually called inferences. And inductive reasoning is often probabilistic, so you cannot be sure 100% that your conclusion is going to be true or applicable, but those are only probabilistic, and it starts from particular to general. Now, if I have to give you an example here, for example, you enter a house and you find that the chairs in the living room are red. Then you move to the dining area and the chairs in the dining area are also red. And on the basis of this experience, you come to the conclusion that all the chairs in the house are red. So this is a generalized assumption about the situation that you are in, and this will come under inductive reasoning. I hope it's clear. Let's move to another topic, which is problem solving. So what are some of the types or methods of problem solving? The first one is trial and error. And in trial and error, testing possible solutions until the right one is found. So what you do in trial and error, you test all the possible solutions and there will be errors in the process, and after many such errors, you will come to the right one, and which will be the solution. So after several trials and errors, you come to the solution. That is known as the trial and error method. Then we have algorithm, a set of rules which, if followed correctly, will guarantee a solution to a problem. So often in mathematics, when you use a formula, you often arrive at the conclusion and the solution is guaranteed here if you use it correctly, of course. So algorithm, let me repeat, a set of rules which, if followed correctly, will guarantee a solution to a problem. Heuristics. Heuristics are strategies usually based on our past experiences with problems that are likely to lead to a solution but do not guarantee success. Then we have insight. Solutions found suddenly after repeated failure and a gap. So you go on trying, but when you leave the problem because you did not find any solution and there is a gap, and suddenly the solution comes to your mind and you have an aha experience, that is the insight. Then we have lateral thinking, approaching solutions creatively and indirectly. That means you don't approach the problem directly, you see it through a different angle. For example, in your current situation, the only motive that is in your mind is that you have to earn as much money as you can. You want to earn more, but you don't find any solution to your problem of lack of money. So what do? you keep on trying to earn money from various sources, but you fail, and now you have to think of some other way to have more money. So after repeated failures of earning money, you may try to see it from a different angle and try not to earn money as such, but to cut down your costs so as to have money with you, so as to have savings, and so as to cut expenditure. As a result, you have more money with you, the motive is fulfilled, and that is an example of lateral thinking. Now, what are some of the strategies of problem solving? And these are actually the steps when you go through a problem solving cycle. Now, the very first step is identifying the problem. You identify the problem first, and then you represent the problem. After representation of the problem, you plan the solution. You set sub goals, and you evaluate all solutions. That what will work for you, you evaluate all the solutions that come to your mind and select one solution and execute it. After the evaluation, that means you select one solution and implement it, and after the outcome, you evaluate the outcome now. And on the basis of that evaluation, you may rethink and redefine problems and solutions. Now let's go through some of the obstacles to problem solving. So some of the obstacles to problem solving are mental set. Mental set is one's inclination to solve a problem in such a way that has proved successful in previous attempts. So according to your past experience, you try to solve a problem. That means if you had solved a problem in a particular way, you try to implement that particular process or strategy again for a different problem. For example, in an examination, suppose you encounter a number of problems based on the number series. Okay, it's a reasoning question, and in one type of number series, you have to think of the pattern of numbers where they are placed in such a way that you have to find out the multiplication value of the first and the second one and place it on the fourth, and so on and so forth. But for the next question, if you go on to apply the same pattern, it may not work for you. But according to this obstacle, many times humans actually go through this tendency of repeating the same pattern in the next problem. And after the failure, the person will realize that the solution will not come from this pattern, but you have to implement another solution to this. So maybe in the next question, instead of the multiplication strategy, you have to apply the square of each digit strategy. So this is just an example of mental set. So past experience here plays an important role. So it plays a role to actually hamper your problem solving capability, and the person actually gets stuck in the previous pattern of solving a problem. Then we have functional fixedness, where a fixed design of an object hindering the individual's ability to see it serving other functions. So here a fixed design of an object hinders the individual's ability to see it serving other functions. That means if you have an object at your disposal and you have to use it for some other function, okay, not the one which the object usually serves, but you are unable to realize that this can be used for the current problem, and you fail to use the object to solve your problem in the current situation, that means you are going through functional fixedness. For example, if you are trying to draw margin on a piece of paper and you don't have a ruler with you at that moment, and nearby there is lying a notebook, and many times the person may fail to realize that that particular notebook can be actually used to draw margins on the piece of paper. So that will be termed as functional fixedness. Now we have obstacles in problem solving. Here are some more examples of obstacles. Confirmation bias. So in confirmation bias, what happens is that unconscious or unintentional corruption of the scientific method, where one observes and experiments with data in such a way that favors a preconceived notion. हिंदी में एक बात बोलते हैं कि हम वही देखते हैं जो हम देखना चाहते हैं, तो उसी को कहते हैं confirmation bias. For example, you are a practicing psychologist and a patient comes to you, and after the initial conversation, if you are not objective enough, okay, and it may actually happen. So if you're not objective enough and after the initial conversation and you come to know that the patient has got a symptom where he or she feels this urge of staying alone and quiet all the time and does not interact much with others. Now, you may come to the conclusion, or you may believe immediately that the person is going through social anxiety. And on the basis of that belief, you will go on to decipher more about the client. And in this process, on the basis of your belief, you will ignore other patterns of symptoms in the client or the patient. For example, disordered pattern of thinking, then paranoid ideation, for example, which actually leads to another type of diagnosis, which is schizotypal personality disorder. But instead, on the basis of your belief, you will come to the conclusion that the person is having social anxiety. And because of your confirmation bias, you will ignore the other patterns of symptoms. So confirmation bias can happen in any situation. This is just an example. Okay, so let's move to the next example of obstacles in problem solving. Unnecessary constraints. So what happens in unnecessary constraints? The subject subconsciously places boundaries on the task at hand. So maybe the person will be able to solve a problem by following a certain strategy that has come to his or her mind, but because of groupthink, for example, that the person is in a group, and because of the groupthink where everyone tries to think in a definite pattern, the person will actually forego his strategy and try to lean towards the groupthink, and that will actually act as an unnecessary constraint in the process of problem solving. So groupthink is one example of unnecessary constraint. Then we have irrelevant information. So in the process of this video, if you come across any doubt, please write in the comment section. I'll try to clear that. Okay, irrelevant information. Information presented with a problem which is unrelated or unimportant to the problem. So the information which is not needed for your solution, but you tend to keep this information in your trial of solving the problem, but this serves no purpose but only hinders your problem solving. For example, in a maths problem, maybe there is a figure given 15% about a certain sample of a population, and that particular figure is actually not needed in the calculation, but you try to use that particular figure in your calculation and you go on to hit a barrier, and therefore you fail to solve the problem. So irrelevant information are often put in a problem to check the capability of the candidate. So this is information presented with a problem which is unrelated or unimportant to the problem. Then we have decision making. Choosing among alternatives by evaluating the cost and benefit associated with each alternative. So decision making is all about choosing among many alternatives by evaluating the cost and benefit associated with each alternative. There are types of decision making. For example, program decision making, where it is repetitive in nature and it is used to solve frequent and simple problems that have established procedures. So in an office arrangement, this type of decision making is often used. Then we have non-programmed decision making. It is related to exceptional situations for which there are no established rules or policy. We also have operational or tactical or strategic decision making, and this is related to present problem, aims at high efficiency. So now we come to the models of decision making. What are the models of decision making? We have three models here: rational and classical model, administrative or bounded rationality model, retrospective model. Let's first go through rational or classical model. What are the assumptions of rational classical model? The assumptions are: the problems are clear, objectives are clear, people agree on criteria and weights, all alternatives are known, all consequences can be anticipated, and decision makers are rational. That means decision makers are not biased in recognizing problems, capable of processing all relevant information, can anticipate consequences, search for all possible alternatives. Then we come to bounded rationality. So this is quite opposite to the rational or classical model, where we are assuming that decision makers are often rational and problems are clear, objectives are clear, but this is not the case in real life situations often. So Herbert Simon, he came up with bounded rationality model, where the assumption is that individual may not be rational always. Okay, so it does not assume individual rationality in the decision process, and assumes that people, while they may seek the best solution, normally settle for much less because they don't possess enough information, time, and processing capabilities. So like in the rational model, where objectives and problems are all clear, here not all information, time, and processing capabilities are available. That's why the solution is met, but often it's settled for much less. Okay, so this is all about bounded rationality. Then we have retrospective decision model. It is also known as the implicit favorite model, and it was developed by Per Solberg, and decision is often made intuitively. Decision makers identify implicit favorites, that is the alternative they want, very early in the decision making process. That means the decision maker already knows what type of solution he or she wants to implement. He or she identifies that particular solution very early in the decision making process, okay, the alternative that they want, and they proceed accordingly. And decision makers then attempt to justify or rationalize their decisions because they have already chosen an alternative. The process then leads them to attempt to justify or rationalize their decisions, that why their decision is correct. Now we come to the types of concepts. We have two types of concepts: basic concepts, concepts that are learned easily and early, and we also have artificial concepts, the concepts which are learned with rewards or reinforcement. We can give another classification of concepts here. The superordinate level, it is the highest level and usually abstract or vague. So superordinate level or the highest level of concepts are usually abstract or vague. Not everyone will be able to decipher this. Then we have the basic level, and it is also known as the intermediate level, and it is usually used in daily conversation. So most of us use the basic level or the intermediate level of concepts in our daily conversations. We also have the subordinate level, and this is the lowest level of concept, and it is usually too specific. Now, what are some of the strategies of concept formation? I have just listed the names of those strategies. So one of the strategy is discrimination learning, where we learn to respond differently to different stimuli. Then we have context. We often learn concept according to the context where they are placed. And we also learn concepts through definition and also by hypothesis testing. Now, what are some of the rules in concept formation? One is the experience or exploration, that direct participation in an action is necessary in order to form concept. Then we have abstraction, discovering the common elements in a large number of situations after experiencing them. Then we have generalization. Generalization is the extending concept to include objects which possess a quality in common with other objects but which have not been experienced as any of the objects in the abstracting process. Then we have analysis, systematic procedure applied to understand a context. Now we have another subtopic from this unit, which is metacognition, and here it's very interesting to actually state here that it's all about knowing, cognition about cognition, and thinking about thinking. Quite funny in a way, but it means the awareness of your knowledge. You know that you possess that knowledge. Okay, you are aware of what you possess, or you know that you are having this part of information about a topic. That means you have the possession of knowledge about a certain topic and you are aware of that, and that is metacognition. And meta means beyond or on top of, and it includes knowledge about when and how to use particular strategies for learning or problem solving. And it was given by American developmental psychologist John H. Flavel, 1976. And then we have metacognitive knowledge or metacognition, the knowledge of cognition. And components of metacognition are content knowledge or the declarative knowledge. It is the understanding of one's own capabilities. Then we have task knowledge or procedural knowledge, how one perceives the difficulty of a task. And strategic knowledge or conditional knowledge, capability to use strategies to learn information. Then we have metacognitive regulation. So what is metacognitive regulation? What learners do about learning. So you have the knowledge, and what do you do about it? Okay, it describes how learners monitor and control their cognitive processes. And there are certain steps in metacognitive regulation. The first step is planning, where learners think about strategies to use. Second step is monitoring, where implementation of plan and monitoring progress. And the third step is evaluation, where learners determine how successful the strategy they used was in helping them to attain the goal. Then we have the subtopic of the theoretical perspectives on thought processes. Associationism. It is the oldest theory, and according to associationism, pairs of thought become associated based on the organism's past experiences. So if we want to have more clarity on associationism, we can actually state that the frequency with which an organism has come into contact with X's and Y's in one's environment determines the frequency with which thoughts about X's and thoughts about Y's will arise together in the organism's future. So according to associationism, pairs of thought become associated, and this is a process which is based on the organism's past experiences regarding the object of thought. Then we have the Gestalt theory of thinking, and the Gestalt theory of thinking can be found in Max Wertheimer's book Productive Thinking. And according to this theory, which is Gestalt theory, thinking should be done in terms of wholes, and the trial and error method is totally rejected in the Gestalt theory or the Gestalt perspective. And according to the Gestalt theory, thinking is insightful. Okay, and there are three types of thinking. Type A thinking, which is the productive type of thinking. Then we have the type Y thinking, which is blind and trial and error thinking, and type Y thinking is actually rejected by Gestalt theory. And then we have type B, partly productive and partly unproductive. Now, what are the processes in type A thinking? In type A thinking, we have centering, and centering is the transition from personal or subjective view to detached or objective view. And then we have recentering, which is actually having a new perspective altogether. Then we have the information processing view of thinking. According to this, thinking process is compared to how a computer works, and the human mind is just like the computer, takes in information, organizes and stores it to be retrieved at a later time. So you have already studied about information processing theory of memory. Likewise, the information processing view of thinking also states that the human mind takes in information, organizes and stores it, and then it is retrieved at a later time. Then we have the feature integration model, and this model was developed by Annette Risman and Gary Gillette, 1980. And according to this theory, when perceiving a stimulus, features are registered early, and these are again registered automatically and in parallel, while objects are identified separately. So the features of the object are detected early. And there are two stages in the feature integration model. The first stage is the pre-attentive stage, and the second stage is the focused attention stage. So what happens in the pre-attentive stage? Different parts of the brain automatically gather information about basic features in the visual field. And in the focused attention stage, subject combines individual features of an object to perceive the whole object. So here we come to the end of the video. Thank you for watching till the end. And if you think that this video is helpful, then please like, share this video with your friends who are preparing for UGC NET psychology paper, and please subscribe to this channel, and don't forget to press the bell icon please, so that next notification comes to you as soon as I upload the new video. So thank you for watching. Take care. Bye bye.